Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is obviously I need you to write your name at the top. For a class, go ahead and put your class period followed by today's date. Before we begin, what I would like for you to do is to number the paragraphs to the left-hand side. Today I'm going to read the article along with you, and I would highly encourage you to make annotations as we go, the same annotations that I do as we go along. So here we go. This article is titled The Madness of Humanity, Part 3, Tribalism, by Marcelo Glacier for NPR, 2016. In this essay, which is the third part in a series exploring different facets of humanity, Marcelo Glacier discusses how tribalism plays a role in our society today. Tribalism, as Glacier defines it, in his text involves the sense of loyalty and belonging that members of a group feel for their group. Glacier provides a variety of examples for how we view tribalism and the roles it plays in our society today. As you read, identify and analyze the positive and negative effects that tribalism has on society. This is the third in a series of essays concerning our collective future. The goal is to bring forth some of the main issues humanity faces today as we move forward to uncertain times. In an effort to be as thorough as possible, we will consider two kinds of threats: those due to natural disasters and those that are man-made. The idea is to expose some of the dangers and possible mechanisms that have been proposed to deal with these issues. My intention is not to offer a detailed analysis for each threat, but to invite reflection and hopefully action. On March 23, 1998, in San Diego, California, 39 members of the Heaven's Gate sect willfully committed suicide. Their cue, as interpreted by their leader, Doe, was the closest approach of the comet Hale-Bopp to Earth. Members of Heaven's Gate believed that an unidentified point of light trailing the comet was a long-awaited redeeming UFO, transporting aliens that would transfer them to a purely spiritual plane of existence. The point of light was later identified as the star SAO 141894. History is filled with similar examples of apocalyptic sects whose members chose death over life, some peaceful and others extremely aggressive to anyone who doesn't, quote-unquote, belong. Belonging is a key word here. It has its origins in our tribal past, when groups of individuals would struggle and fight for survival in adverse environmental conditions. To belong to the tribe meant protection from outside aggressors and an immediate sense of identity. I am part of a group that shares my values. Being part of this group makes me strong. Those who are not part of my group, though that don't share my values, are a threat. They are the enemy. If we don't destroy them, they will destroy us. We thus must convert others to our value system, or if that fails, destroy them by any means available. So the first thing we want to annotate is within the first paragraph, the sentence that reads, "In an effort to be as thorough as possible, we will consider two kinds of threats: those due to natural disasters and those that are man-made." Next to this, I want you to write the words author's purpose. The author plainly states what his intention is within the very first paragraph. Lastly, he concludes the paragraph by stating that his intention was not to offer a detailed analysis for each threat, but to invite reflection and hopefully action. Within the second paragraph, go ahead and highlight or underline on March 23rd, 1998 in San Diego, California. Right here, label it setting. Okay? Now, within the next paragraph, we're going to label this paragraph anecdote, because what the author has done here is give us a brief story, a short story that proves or that goes along with his thesis discussing tribalism. So we're going to write the word anecdote to the side. Okay? All right. Now, this last paragraph on this first page is quite interesting because it does have a major topic, which is the word belonging. If you notice that he even has several words with the root like of belonging and to belong several times throughout the paragraph. And that kind of goes along, or does go along, with the notion of tribalism. So at the bottom, what I did was I wrote the word belonging in capital letters. Because it even says it's the key word here, right? It's part of tribalism. He repeats, to belong. I am part of a group. Continuing, being part of a group makes me strong. And then this idea of those who are not part of it, that those who are not part of my group are a threat. Right here, y'all, I would label this us versus them. Going along with that notion of what is tribalism, it's this idea that, it gives us a sense of belonging, and that those who do not agree with us are an immediate threat. Okay, let's go ahead and turn the page and look at the next page. There are gradations of tribalism, of course. Only the most extreme would adopt the those who don't belong are enemies value system, and only the most aggressive within these will opt to destroy their opponents. Most tribes actually feed on each other's strength and motivation to pursue a common goal. In his recent book, Tribe, Sebastian Junger argues for the importance of such socially bonding values, citing that detribalization of modern life as a cause for our current social and political misdirection. Tribalism can play a positive role in society and has been key to our survival. However, taken to its extreme, tribalism is divisive, prejudiced, small-minded, and, as we see every day in the news, deadly. Anthropologist Scott Atron, director of the Institute in Jean-Nicode in Paris and from the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, has been studying radical Islamic movements for years. In particular, Atron is interested in what makes peaceful and mostly non-religious young people leave their countries and families to join violent organizations such as the Islamic State. Atron's arguments resonate with the attraction of extreme tribal behavior mentioned above. Young people adrift in a globalized world go to ISIS and other extreme movements seeking a shared identity that gives their lives a sense of meaning and purpose. The rise of the Islamic State is a revolutionary movement of historic proportions. Many of its members are devoted actors with an apocalyptic belief that they must destroy the world to save it, said Atron, as quoted by Bruce Bauer in Science News. The most extreme tribal behavior springs from a perceived threat to what the group believes are sacred values or beliefs. Sacred here doesn't necessarily imply religious values. Secularized sacred, as Atron refers to it, can play a key role as well, as in political notions of human rights or in ideologies that attempt to save humanity through political revolution, socialism, anarchism, communism, fascism, etc. There is a paradox here, as we humans need to belong. We are social animals, and being part of an identifying group is essential to a healthy emotional life. We experiment with such tribal behaviors all the time, from cliques in junior high school to sports fans with painted faces. Sometimes such experiments get heavy, and violence erupts. Growing up in Brazil, I remember as a kid how ferociously I defended my local soccer team. Anyone who didn't support my team was at least suspicious, if not plain mad. How could their value system be sound if they chose to support another team? And how different is this from the current polarized behavior during this election season? Different tribes with different value systems vying for power. Okay, so there's a couple of terms that I want to point out to you or a term in paragraph 6. I want you to draw a box around the word detribalization. Okay, and then it says, he reads, citing the detribalization of modern life as a cause for our current social and political misdirection. Tribalism can play a positive role in society and has been key to our survival. So what we get from this paragraph is that tribalism isn't always a bad thing. So tribalism can be good, okay? But we're using this transition word, however, taken to its extreme, tribalism is divisive, prejudiced, small-minded, and as we see every day in the news, deadly. So then we see the notion of extremism, extremism, can be bad. In paragraph 8, okay, we have another example. So we have from anthropologist Scott Atran, who brings up the example of the Islamic State. So remember that in paragraph 7, we had that transition to a different topic about extremism and how it can be bad. And then he, like I just said, he's using the example of ISIS. It says that ISIS and other extreme movements seeking a shared identity that gives their lives a sense of meaning and purpose. This is a credible source right here. Okay. Now, in the last paragraph of this page, he starts it off with that there's a paradox here. He continues to mention that these everyday notions and examples of tribalism, right? And so right here, let's go ahead and write personal anecdote. It's a personal example. Lastly, I really want to point this out to y'all because this applies to what we have been reading in Lord of the Flies. Different tribes with different value systems vying for power. If you look at the bottom, it says that to vie is to compete eagerly with someone in order to do or achieve something. So let's label this LOTF because this is that major conflict between Jack and Ralph that we've seen in Lord of the Flies. Okay, go ahead, make these annotations, and when you're finished, turn over and let's finish off this article, please. Okay, tribalism is deeply ingrained in our value system. There's no way out of it. We need it, we love it, we hate it. What leads to extreme behavior, however, is something else. Extreme behavior comes from a radicalized sense of belonging, a desperate attachment to a single-minded goal that causes a short-sightedness of the other. Extreme behavior is inward-looking, intolerant, unwilling to grow, to look out. The need to belong trumps any other value system, even the value of one's own life. Leaders feed on the devotion of their followers. Followers feed on the devotion to their leader and the cause he or she represents. After millennia of agrarian civilization, we remain morally stuck in our tribal behavior. Buddhists talk of detachment as the way to inner peace, that the root of all ill comes from our attachment to things, to values, to people. This is a hard lesson to learn for most of us, but if we connect a level of detachment to openness, we may have a chance to move on. We can commit to goals without radicalizing them, to support groups without demonizing others. We can follow value systems without closing off to different choices that others make. Red Sox or New York Yankees, we all share the same playing field. Okay, so this first notion, or this first paragraph of the page, tells us the idea that even though, tribalism isn't always like great. I mean, it's often like just a part of our everyday behavior and everyday society. So then he talks about that it's the extreme behavior is where it tends to go to the negative side of things, okay? And especially with that last paragraph or that last sentence rather, that leaders feed off of the devotion of the followers, but followers feed on the devotion of their leader to the cause that they represent. So right here we have this idea of tribalism versus extremism, okay? In the following paragraph 13, this last sentence, this is a hard lesson for us to learn, for most of us, to learn for most of us, but if we connect a level of detachment to openness, we have a chance to move on, meaning we shouldn't really allow our differences to separate us, okay? So then he finishes off the article with this idea of tribalism. We're going to label it tribalism without extremism. Basically, it's important for us to feel that sense of belonging. However, it does not always need to go to extreme behavior. Okay, so after you finish making the annotations, make sure that you answer all of the questions in the pages that follow. If you have any further questions, please contact your English 1 teacher.